Hello everybody, and thank you for watching. Today in this video I'm going to show you how I turn this beautiful sparkly applique covered wedding dress into my Rapunzel costume. I got this wedding dress at a thrift store for maybe $20. I don't know, it was kind of more on the expensive side, especially for a used dress, but when I really thought about how much fabric and lining and tulle and I don't know if it's chiffon, I don't know, it's some kind of really nice fashion fabric, and then obviously all these sparkly, beautiful appliques, buttons down the back, gorgeousness. I realized that it was really quite a good deal because there's no way I could ever get that much fabric for new from a big box store like Hobby Lobby or Joann's. So it really made a lot of sense. Plus I love thrift stores. I love taking old things and making them into new things, and I also really can't turn down a good deal. So it seemed perfect. I took it home, and like most other used things I take home from thrift stores or garage sales, it just sat in my room for a while because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. But like I said, can't pass up a good deal. I had a few bottles of fabric dye sitting in my room that I had never used. I had gotten them on sale actually at a grocery store. Never knew you could buy fabric dye at a grocery store, but they had some and it was clearanced, so obviously I bought it. And it was purple, and I thought, what better than to dye this wedding dress purple? After all, I already have the dye, and I had a lot of good trimmings like ribbons and enough thread and a couple other things that met the color scheme for a Rapunzel costume. So I guess that's what inspired me to turn this into Rapunzel. This actually isn't even a full dress anymore. I'm taking this after the fact of making Rapunzel. There's still this much applique left, so I'm obviously going to be dyeing that and using that for other projects in the future. I'm just not sure what yet, so I'm holding on to it. But yeah, I don't know, that's what inspired me to turn it into Rapunzel, and it definitely isn't the best costume ever or anything, and I wouldn't even call this like a tutorial. It's just a video showing you what I did and how I made my costume using this dress. Yeah, just with some of the footage that I had from making it, some of the pictures and behind the scenes photos that I had taken and videos and such. I try and explain what I did, and I'm going to put a bit at the end explaining how I made the sleeves because I didn't really have many good pictures or videos of that. But yeah, I just love taking old wedding dresses. They're like a blank canvas, and you can literally do so much with them. Like, another man's trash is another man's treasure, or however that goes. Yeah. Okay, let's get started. Alright, so to make this costume, you're going to need some things. First of all, you're going to need a wedding dress that you found at a thrift store, and you're going to need a way to dye this dress by using some purple fabric dye. Only the kind that was discounted at a grocery store. It's the only type that will work, obviously. And then you're going to need some fabric. Scissors, pinking shears work great if you don't have a serger. You're going to need a way to measure your fabric, and then some needles, pins, very important. Some threads that match the color scheme of your costume. And of course, if you're going to have thread, you're going to need a seam ripper, because who doesn't make mistakes? I know you make mistakes, I make them too, don't worry. And then you're going to need some ribbons, lace, different things to decorate your costume, and a sewing machine, of course, unless you're going to do this by hand, but I don't recommend, that's crazy. Sewing machines are great. The first thing I did is I went ahead and I cut my costume in half. I wanted to cut the skirt off from the top because I wanted to sew up the skirt and then dye that individually from all the appliques. I wanted to save some of my other appliques so I could use it for other costumes in the future, and I didn't want to dye them purple because I knew that I wouldn't be able to use them for other things, and I was going to want to make costumes that weren't purple in the future. So I went ahead and I sewed up the skirt except for the lining, the very lining of the skirt at the very center. I pulled that out and I dyed that piece separately because I was going to use that piece for the lining of my bodice. Or not the lining of my bodice. I actually used the lining of the skirt as the outside or fashion fabric, if you want to call it, of the bodice. So I went ahead and sewed that skirt up before dyeing it. And according to my manufacturer's instructions, you needed to use hot water or boiling water for your dye to take place. In order to dye, I needed 2 buckets, one for the dress to drain it and then one for soaking. Gloves are very important as well because I didn't want to stain my hands. And then I needed my dye as well. I used the synthetic right dye. My dress wasn't actually, or no, not synthetic. I used, what did I use? I don't know. Well, there's some instructions if you need to read them. I went ahead and I followed the instructions, which I can't remember exactly how they went, and I put that solution, dye, whatever, into my hot boiling bucket of water, and I soaked my fabric. Here you can see I'm kind of just testing it out. I wasn't really sure. I hadn't taken like a fabric swatch or anything because I didn't have a lot of extra fabric to work with. It's always really hard to tell as well when you're dyeing things because the water looks so much darker than it ends up taking to the dress, especially when you rinse out your fabric. I also went ahead and I dyed some appliques, and those came out a lot darker because they must have been made of cotton. And here comes a cool moment. Shush. Man, this water looks so dark. Hopefully doesn't, the color's actually looking pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you can tell it's like really dark. But so far, so good. I don't know, I guess I'll let it sit in here for like 15 minutes or so, and we'll see. So it's a beautiful Rapunzel purple, hopefully. I know that was like some cool ASMR or whatever they call it, so hopefully I didn't ruin it. Anyway, now you can see that the skirt came out more of a pink than a purple, and the appliques did turn out brighter. For this, on the very left, I use interfacing. The middle is the lining of the skirt, which I then used as my fashion fabric for my bodice. And then on the very right, I have a sheet, which I used for the lining of my bodice. I had to cut out 7 of each, so that's 21 pieces, lots of pieces to make a bodice. Oh my goodness. And then I sewed those up how you would sew a bodice, and I put in little tabs in the front. You can kind of see right there the little pink tabs. I wanted to make a false corset in the front just to add decoration along with these beautiful appliques. Basically right here what I am doing is I am cutting out all the little bits of fabric in between just so that I can tidy it up, make it look pretty, more professional. I don't really work with appliques often, but I definitely know that you're supposed to do that, so hopefully I did it correctly. I thought that it looked pretty good when I got done with it. I don't know, it's my costume, and if I like it, I like it, so who really cares if I did it right? Anyway, I went ahead and cut those out, placed them on my bodice, and then I went ahead and I sewed them on by hand. I'm pretty certain you're supposed to sew those on by hand as well, but like I said before, who really cares if anybody else likes it? I like it, and it was a costume for me, so in the end, I thought it came out pretty good. And I went ahead and I just sewed those on by hand, which took forever, so I went ahead and sped it up for you. And even so, this is a lot to watch. This is like taking forever to get through. I feel so bad for you people. I mean, who really wants to see me sew and sew and sew? I'm getting bored myself. Look at me go. I just sew. Also, you can see I'm sewing with my legs. Yeah, I'm using that to prop up the bodice because I can't hand sew at tables. It just, I can't. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. And if you're going to hand sew, you either have to do it on the floor or you have to do it on a bed. You can't do it at tables. Just the rules. Like I said, I don't make them. But when I did get done with the bodice, I thought it looked pretty good. Here you can see a front of the bodice, and I sewed on some lace to cover up those tabs. And here you can see that I added in the ribbons and I made that like false corset front, which I really liked. And then in the back, I added some appliques. You don't see the loops yet for the corset back because I hadn't put them in. There they are on the very left and right. You can see it. They look beautiful, 5 on each side. And then here's the sleeves. So I had that lining fabric from the skirt, and then I used that for my fashion fabric again. And then I had some old bed sheets for my lining. And then I went ahead and I sewed down all my beautiful little ribbons, so cute, onto that fashion fabric. And you're gonna see a video shortly. It's coming. there it is. It kind of shows you what that looks like, kind of bouncy and fun. And then I sewed on like 2 channels on the long sides, and then I like wove elastic through those, I guess, and then I like stuffed them and sewed up the sides, and boom, sleeves. I'll explain that more later, so hang tight. Here you can see the costume is done. I really liked it. There were more steps to that, obviously, like I had to make a waistband and the skirt and such, but that's basically the process. I got some really good pictures of the costume. I loved how it turned out, paying tribute to the ugly duckling right there. My sister actually got the pictures for me, so shout out to my sister. Thank you. And we did edit these pictures a little to make it more bright and like bright green, but it was just really gorgeous, and the flowers were purple. They were like the exact same shade of my dress, and it was just perfect. So thanks for watching, and here are the sleeves. Alright, so to make the sleeves, you have to have your lining. I'm just using one fabric to demonstrate for everything, but we're going to have our lining. So for my Rapunzel, that would have been the white fabric, and then you're going to have your outer fabric, or the pretty side, or fashion fabric, whatever you want to call it, which was pink for my Rapunzel costume. And then you're going to need your ribbons. These are just some random ribbons I had. For my costume, I used those purple and pink ones in all different sizes. And then you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric that you can use as like bias tape. And then you're also going to need some elastic, not pictured here. I forgot to grab some. Anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to sew down all your ribbons on your pretty side. And then what you're going to do is you're going to then take your sewn down ribbons on your pretty side, and you're going to go ahead and and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to sew that down onto your lining fabric. You're just going to sew here to here. And then you're going to take your bias tape. You can buy some, make it homemade, doesn't really matter. As long as it's pretty wide, because we're going to be using this as a casing actually. And you're going to go ahead and sew that down on both of your long sides. When you have done that, you can then add in your elastic, however big you need it to be, or however long you need it to be, so that it's going to be snug around your arm, and you're going to sew those in. Obviously you want that elastic to probably be like from here to there. Like, you don't want it to be the full length. You want it to be stretched out. So when your elastic is stretched, you want it to sew here and here inside of your bias casing, which you haven't made yet, but you would have made. And then when you're done with that, what you're going to do is you're going to sew up one side, and you're going to go ahead and take your lining and then your outer fabric, and you're going to stuff it. You could use stuffing, or what I used is I used some old tulle and fabric scraps because it was pretty light and it worked well for my purposes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and take both sides and sew right down the short sides, and you're done. You have a sleeve.